Right, we've talked about the fundamental principles and the civil relationships, which consisted of our freedoms and rights to be who we are, and the authority not to control us and to organise us and to give us limits. We've got the freedom to choose our political orientation, our religion, go where we want to go and have our space. And also, not just individual but collective rights, the freedom to protest and create associations, etc. Now, in Title 2, we talk about social and ethical relationships. This is where the individual is integrated into the community, into the social context, where we create an Italian. A baby can't do anything, can't even smile, always moving around and examining and experimenting and grabbing things, find out what they feel like, etc. We have to transmit an identity, values, a culture, what is it to be Italian? And in this chapter, it brings about this process, shall we say. So the state actively creates a school system to actively integrate a human being into an Italian context and authorises or demands that the family does its, because we've got to remember the family has a big role, does its role in creating an Italian and maintaining an Italian. And also the public hospital is created here. So, it's all about creating and maintaining an Italian citizen. The roots of this, the values of this, from the fundamental principles, we can see in Article 2 and 3. Article 2 talks a lot about solidarity. La Repubblica richiede l'adempimento dei doveri inderogabili di solidarietà politica, economica e sociale. Because where do we create this solidarity? We create it in the family, in the school. We create relations. We create this. It's an act of solidarity. The school system and the hospital system and the family must create relations and a feeling of wanting to do the right thing for our fellow citizen, wanting to think not just of our individual interests and express who we are, but also to act on the interests of our fellow citizens. So, also number 3, Article 3 in the fundamental principles is enacted in this chapter. It says that in the second comma, it says: è compito della Repubblica rimuovere gli ostacoli di ordine economico e sociale che, limitando di fatto la libertà e l'eguaglianza dei cittadini, impediscono il pieno sviluppo della persona umana. Okay, so here, yes, the state must do something to remove these obstacles which stop our full development and impede our freedom and equality. How does it do that? It does that through the hospital system and the school system. So these, in actual fact, act for this reason, putting into effect that value, that we have a state that's there, ready, big, and makes its presence felt, helping us. So the important articles in this, first is Article 29 in this titolo. 29, Article 29, starts like this. The first comma says La Repubblica riconosce I diritti della famiglia come società naturale fondata sul matrimonio. Okay, so it's recognizing that the family is a social formation and a natural one. So it recognizes it's not establishing a family because it knows a family, the social formation of a family, pre-exists the state. Before the state ever existed, there was the family. So it recognizes this existence and doesn't establish this existence. And then Article 30 says, the first comma, è dovere e diritto dei genitori mantenere, istruire e educare I figli anche se nati fuori dal matrimonio. So here, yes, again, the family is being told by the state that they must create an Italian, instruct and educate and maintain. So, you know, as babies, we can't do anything. We can't even smile without being taught. And the family has a front line, is on the front line of developing human beings. The family teaches us how to walk, how to speak, how to be polite and social etiquette. The fundamentals, all the fundamentals of thinking and reasoning start in the family. When we talk in our families, we're learning to think, and we're learning about relationships and how we must behave. Maybe the family teaches the children to clean their teeth, so they're maintaining them in that way, or to look before crossing the road, or be careful and not to climb up a tree, etc., etc. So their job is to maintain, educate and instruct these babies until they're developed Italians, and they understand the values and the culture, and they have an identity that is Italian. So that's very important. The founding fathers were very wise to recognise it's not just the school that transmits this knowledge which we take for granted, this competence which we take for granted of how to behave in the most fundamental form, and gives that as a duty to the family. And then a very important article is Article 33 and 34. You need to take these together because they're about the school. 33 says, l'arte e la scienza sono libere e libero nell'insegnamento. So that first comma is talking about art in a very general way. It means, our expression, our genius, our personal genius, our way of seeing the world and expressing that, interpreting the world in our way and expressing that. So, and then scienza, again, a very general way, how the world works, is free in its teaching. So the teachers must profess their lessons in a free way. They must choose how to do that, what the method is, and what the didactic approach is, and how to teach, what to teach and how to teach. And the students also are free to disagree, and maybe they see things in a different way, and to question. Obviously, we need to give reasons to students. If they disagree, they have to reason it through and confront the teachers, and we must look at things objectively, but they could also have a position. We've got to remember, we don't want to teach people how to see the world. They've got to develop their way of seeing the world through their eyes. Not everything is objective. Often things are subjective. Political views, philosophy, interpretations. We can have different interpretations for reality. And the students must develop their way of looking at the world and cannot be instructed how to see certain things. Certain facts, obviously, must be known. But then we've got Article 34, which is very important, and it says la scuola è aperta a tutti, l'istruzione inferiore impartita per almeno 8 anni è obbligatoria e gratuita. So here we see that the school is open and must be created if it's free. So, for 10 years it's free. Normally it's from 6 to 16 the obligations of the modern school. But here there's a constitutional duty to send your children to school for 8 years, and it's free. It's obligatory and free. So that means the state has to provide the resources for this. Then it continues. I capaci e meritevoli, anche se privi di mezzi, hanno diritto di raggiungere i gradi più alti degli studi. La Repubblica rende effettivo questo diritto con borse di studio, assegni alla famiglia ed altre provvidenze che devono essere attribuite per concorso. Okay, so here we can see also the state removing obstacles which impede the full development of students, and this is right, because we don't want these resources not being utilised. They need to be used, and if the obstacle is economic, the state must allow those students that have the capacity and deserve to keep going. They must be allowed to keep going with help. The state must be prepared to remove these obstacles. Okay. So another very important part of this social and ethical relationships is Article 32, which talks about the public health. It says, La Repubblica tutela la salute come fondamentale diritto dell'individuo e interesse della collettività e garantisce cure gratuite agli indigenti. So, from this first comma, we can see that the state must also provide resources to cure people. We saw in Article 30 that parents must maintain, instruct and educate their children, but also the state must play its role in maintaining people. It can be seen as another obstacle which impedes our full development, which is Article 3 of the Constitution. This value of the state rolling its sleeves up and doing something to help us reach our full potential, which is, in the interest, our collective interest. We want people to be able to reach their full potential and take everyone with them, if they can be cured. And it's a collective interest. It says, we're not just talking about contagious diseases. Obviously, a collective interest to stop contagious diseases, but also imagine if something terrible happened, an accident, and people could just bleed to death or just not be helped. The desperation this would bring to people that haven't got the money to heal themselves, to go to hospital, they would be very desperate. This would create an environment of desperate people, fighting a fight which is life or death. So we don't want this atmosphere, this climate in society where people really think they can be just left to die if they haven't got the money. That doesn't create the right environment where people can reach their full potential if they're full of fear.